Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever you are joining us. If you are live, please say hi in the chat. If you're watching on replay, let us know that you're on replay. You are here for episode number 72. I cannot believe it. And today is Q&A Tuesday. So as with all Tuesdays, we are talking about your biggest time management challenge, but it is our last week of the show. So I wanted to take this content to the next level for you. So I have brought on Tracey Liv, who is going to talk to us today about the productivity archetype. Now, Tracey, as with all my guests, is a fountain of knowledge about a huge variety of different things. So we are just scratching the surface with archetypes today. And as always, if you love any of my guests, go find them on social media and check out more of what they do. So let me tell you a little bit about Tracey. She is the co-founder of Liv Lit, which is a global company that works with business leaders to create success and fulfillment through self-mastery and inner growth. She's an international speaker, a corporate trainer, and a one-to-one coach who's worked with hundreds of business leaders and trained thousands of people across Europe, the Middle East, and North America. So we are going to have a super interesting conversation today. Please hit the like button when Tracey says anything you like. Leave comments, leave questions, because we will try to get to whatever we can. And obviously say hi. Now, let me check that we are live on LinkedIn. Looks like we are. And oh, hi, Tracey.
Hi, nice to see you, Abby. Thanks for having me.
I should say that. Forget that bit. Right, we are on LinkedIn. Awesome, you guys are joining us. Love it, love it, love it. So from the start, from the top, let us know in the comments if you have heard about archetypes, if you know what it is that we are talking about when we say this, because I had no idea what they were for quite a long time, and it was only when I came across a woman called Caroline Massey, and I read her book about archetypes that I suddenly had some kind of understanding about what they even were. So right from the top, Tracey, tell us a little bit about archetypes, maybe a bit about you and how you came across them in the first place.
Oh, good. Well, thank you again for having me. And I'm so excited to talk about the connection and bring productivity to a whole nother level. So we all are aware of archetypes, even if we are not familiar with the word. So you might have heard about, the king or the queen. How about the pirate, the rebel? What about the child? Okay, the saboteur. All of these, if I say that word, that name of someone, we and you even watching it comes with an image of what that means. What symbolically does that represent? So if I say pirate, there is an archetype of what a pirate is and what they're like, what their attributes are, how they engage with the world. And archetypes have light and dark sides, or strengths and weaknesses. So the pirate is beautiful. And I love starting with the pirate because we all can see kids' books. And the pirate is the person who goes out on the open sea. They're quite free-spirited. They're up for an adventure. They also might have a dark side. They might be stealing gold. They might be heavy drinkers. So we all know archetypes and Jungian theories that it's just in our collective unconscious as a global society. So I love to intro with the fact that everyone knows about them, but they might not have had the language for it.
So let's just kind of get to the root. Like, why is it important that we understand it? And are they connected to beliefs?
Yes. And so I do all work in inner work and self-mastery, understanding ourselves. The more that we can understand ourselves, the more we can show up in our businesses, in our personal lives. And we, at any given time, are running 12 archetypes. We each human being has a certain set of traits that are unique to us. And the more that, if you're watching this, the more that you can start to understand what are your 12 archetypes, We all have 4 that are the same, and I can touch on them. If you understand you might be the Joker, you are Jim Carrey. Okay, Jim Carrey, classic, everyone knows him. He has a Joker archetype in the light and in the dark in him. And so we could imagine what that would look like. And even the Joker back, or the jester back in the day, you know, in the medieval times, there was a court jester. It's understanding if we have that in us, it will help empower us to make choices, to be productive, because then we're going to start to make choices on how we want to live our life and what matters to us and our values. And it might go up against societal beliefs and norms, and we have to really understand ourselves first. So I would say at the top level, the understanding of yourself and who you are first is a base layer, and then underneath that comes in productivity, making choices, you know, and being able to fulfill what we're here on earth to do.
Amazing. So what are the 4 archetypes then that are running the show that we're not even aware of?
Yes, good point. So you can all look up this after the talk. I highly recommend that as like a homework assignment. The 4 that all of us have, you and me, Abby, everyone watching, people in countries you will never go to, people all over the world have the same 4, okay? Let's start with the inner child. So that one's quite easy. We all have an inner child, okay? And think of it in a light and a dark. So the inner child can be an innocent child. It could be a mystical inner child, or maybe a wounded child, or an orphan child. So there's layers to the archetypes, but we all have an inner child. We all have a victim, which I think you're keen to get on. We can have that energy within us. The other one is a saboteur, the sabotager, which is quite well known for productivity. We're sabotaging our success. Well, we all have a saboteur within us in the light and the dark. And then the 4th one is really amazingly named. It's called the prostitute. And essentially the prostitute archetype is neutral, but it is, how much can I buy you for? So if you're going to a job that you don't like, the archetype is essentially you're prostituting yourself to a job you don't like, that goes against your morals or your wants and needs to get a paycheck. Okay, we can see that a lot in London and all over the place. The prostitute teaches us to have faith and to trust that if we jump out of a needing money or selling a part of ourselves, we can trust that something will catch us on the other side. And so all 4 of these are, and I can go into a bit more, but I'd love to see where you want to go.
I'm taking notes because this is super exciting. So guys, as you're watching us, please let us know where you're joining from and in the comments. I think the comments on LinkedIn are a bit slow today. I don't really know what's going on social, but we'll carry on talking, and you can watch it on replay, or I'll look back on it. I've done shows before where I've been like, there's nobody there. And then afterwards, just the platforms of tech has failed. So we'll just carry on talking to each other, Tracey. And
perfect. So yeah, I mean, you know, if people are watching this and you know, and I have been working one-to-one with people for a long time in my current business for years. And before that in Washington, D.C., I was the person, everyone would come around the corner. It didn't matter if I was their team lead or not, and say, can I talk to you for a minute? And I would go find an empty room in the office and talk to people. And I worked with students at a university. I worked in the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. My oldest client is in their 60s right now. My youngest client was a 20-year-old guy who did esports and gaming. I mean, I've come across a lot of archetypes, different kinds of people living out what they're meant to do. And, you know, I think the biggest challenge with productivity is when we don't know ourselves and don't know our tendencies, we try to do the tips and tools that is just the easy, try this and that'll solve your productivity challenge. And I think that doesn't get to the root of the individual. And so let's say, for example, the victim archetype, just to bring it to light. In the dark, if we're being a victim to our life or our circumstances, which we all have this, so it's not pointing anyone out, we could be very overgiving. So we can give too much to try to earn the love and respect from someone. But that actually hurts us energetically and potentially with boundaries. And then the other part of the victim is that we don't have boundaries or very loose boundaries. So we could often think of being victimized physically, so we're physically hurt. But if you think about it in a work context or even just in general, emotionally, we might have our boundaries violated, and it will diminish our productivity massively because it will take a long time to recover from the challenges that we're seeing in our life. And so what I recommend is people understanding the victim. It's the other side is that we have to respect our own boundaries. And so I run a business, and so do you. I mean, let me ask you a question. If we'll talk about it in the victim of boundaries, what are your boundaries? Do you have one or two that is a no-go zone related to maybe business or career?
So when I first started my business, this is interesting, I didn't really have that many boundaries. But after a while, I started to realize that if I was teaching something, I had to practice what I preached. And I don't know about you, but I probably get contacted on about 6 platforms every day. So one of the things that I had to start to recognize was that it wasn't my job to check all 6 platforms constantly to see that I was replying to everybody and that I was replying to everybody every day of the week. So some of the things that I put into place is that I don't reply on Facebook at the weekend.
So you won't be a victim of that. Do you see that? You bring the archetype in. So I'm not being victimized by these comments so that my energy is drained, my emotional energy is gone, and then who's to blame? And the thing is with archetypes, we have to take ownership of them.
Because I can't say I feel like I'm always replying to everybody's messages all the time if I'm not aware that this is what I'm doing. So the pattern that I'm running, this is why I think archetypes are so important. And it can get sort of a bit like people can get hung up on a word. It's not that it's a word, it's that the outcome of what it's doing. So an archetype is running a story, and the story that it's running is creating an action, and that action is creating the result.
And look at your story, Abby. So if you kept doing that, you would feel like a victim. So that is actually true. And also with your overgiving and overstepping your own boundaries, how could you be productive? Because if you're constantly messaging people back, it's taking you away from your genius. It's taking you away from maybe putting on the show right now. So everyone watching is, if you don't have boundaries in a certain way, that's related to the victim archetype. But what's it keeping you from? It's keeping you from, let's say Jim Carrey with the Joker, shipping the movie, getting, that's his role. And so it's really important to think about how do I need to then use this to empower myself to make a change? That's when you're productive, because you make a change and you say, oh, this is mine to own. And I would say that's where inner growth and the spiritual growth comes right into play, because productivity is so complex. Wouldn't you say there's so much root to the challenges that people face?
Yeah. And I love what you said about it's not the hacks, the tips, the what can I do? It's getting to the actual root of the problem. And the problem is we all have the same 24 hours. So what are you doing with your time? And what you're doing with your time is based on what you believe about what you should be doing with your time, which is when you then go into the victim, because it's, if I don't reply to these people's messages, they'll think I'm being rude. They'll think I'm disrespectful. They won't like me. And that comes back to the beliefs and the training. So I find the whole thing fascinating, because we can't ever progress in our careers, in our business, in our life, in our relationships, until we release the stories that we're running or the archetype that we're playing.
Right. Or how to use the archetype into the light.
Yeah.
And so with your example, if we take that over into another archetype of the saboteur, which is all about change. It's how much change are you willing to see in your life? And the saboteur is related to choices. And so we could have people on kind of 2 ends of the saboteur spectrum. Is they either change too much. So they're the people that change from task to project. They start something, stop something, and nothing ever gets the depth of quality that's going to bring them the money, the success, the opportunities that they see in their mind. They can't manifest it because they never settle down. They're sabotaging with too much choice. And then the other side is the person who you can't move. They're sabotaging their success because they won't leave that job, or they won't make that important email because they're afraid of what will happen. And so they're sabotaging their ability to move forward and even to be make productive choices for they're probably way too much in their head, and they're quite, again, with their beliefs, paralyzed about what would happen. And so what we want to do is find a healthy balance of the saboteur, of when can I jump out on a ledge and make some choices and changes? And then when do I need to hang out and go deep with this? So the same with your show. You've done 72 episodes. You've gone really deep with it. How much knowledge do you have about running this? Because you didn't sabotage yourself and do one and say, well, only 5 people watched it, so forget it. That's not productive. It's more productive to go deep first and then take it away. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, when I first started the show, it was 5 days a week. And we did the first 19 episodes back to back to back. And part of the story running in me was, I need to support people with the show. And if the show's not on every day, then they're not going to be supported. But I had to shine the light back on myself and say, but how are you supporting yourself? Because you can't give from an empty cup. So then there is, like, the Easter holiday weekend. There's 4 days off. And then we go back to the 5 days a week again. But we only did that for like another month before it was brought back to 3 days per week. But then there's also all this internal chat about, but it's not supporting people 5 and blah, 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 blah. But so it's finding the balance between who are we running the business for, and then what are we teaching people by the actions that we're demonstrating rather than the words. Because it's well for me to say, yeah, I understand, but I need to, versus I understand and this is the change that's been made. So like now taking the summer off. Well, right. By the end of the week, we'll have delivered 75 episodes. There is a lot of content there. It's all going to go over to YouTube. You can watch it on demand. You can binge watch it. People are still being supported. So this is, I think, an interesting one for the business owners is when is enough? And then for people in their careers, it's when is enough? Like, how much work should I do? How many late nights do I need to do in order to justify that next promotion? Should I reply to my emails? Should I take my laptop to bed? A lot of these things are coming from the victim and the saboteur in.
Right. Or the addict, if we just throw in another archetype, the addict jeopardizes our productivity. The addict, we can think of, okay, someone that's an alcoholic or a drinker. And I say this humbly, I have good friends, their spouses, my family have alcohol problems. And the addict actually can run in all of us in some way. We have to be very aware of what we're addicted to. So this is also another one where we will have our 12 archetypes, the 4 + 8, but then we all run a bit of a rebel. We all have a bit of a rebellious side to us. So it's just about how dominant is this archetype as our personality. But with the addict, we could be addicted to work. There it is in plain English, So an addiction to working, you have to take a step back and say, is this the archetype that's really running me? And how might this be hurting me? So my addict might be sabotaging my success. So they start to weave together. So taking my laptop to bed, always needing to be on the chat, still is removing you from creating your art and your genius. And so it's paying attention to that. And I think people watching this on a deeper level need to be really honest first with themselves, super honest with what's running in order to be able to change it. Because I'm a big proponent on working smarter and allowing the genius to come out rather than pushing and pushing and pushing. But I think that would be for another podcast.
Yeah, I mean, this is a multi-layered and quite a deep conversation. And as I said at the start, I came into it through a teacher. And this teacher, when I first heard her work, I felt like I had been kicked in the gut and punched in the face at the same time. Because you have to own your truth in all of this. Like, when you truly understand the victim, then you're kind of confronted, well, the only person that can change that is you. Yeah. And it's quite a wake-up call to kind of be like, yeah, but it's not my fault.
But who else would do it? Who's going to look good for you?
It's a
I'm
real.
just gonna yell at people now. You're a prostitute. You're selling yourself to this job that you do not like. You've already said it. Here's the archetype. What do you want to do now? And maybe you don't change tomorrow because that's not smart. But what can you do for the next 6 months to get yourself ready to take that leap of faith? You know, so it's about being smart with them. Or you're constantly changing gears. Why don't you just take a 3-day weekend holiday at a spa? No work, put your laptop down, recognize the addict is there. Let's come back to center, and then we can talk again. And I think that I want to just close with a non-judging space. I love this principle in Buddhism. Just be able to put it on the table and look at it. It's brilliant because your life could go so much smoother and more fulfilled by being more aware of yourself and just being okay with the package of archetypes that you are.
Yeah, and I think it's really awesome, and it gives you so much power. And the big reason why I wanted to sort of have this chat is because what is going on right now in the world is bringing up a lot of this for people. So the fact that if you're a workaholic and you can't do those hours in the office, you can't necessarily leave the home and fulfill that, then what do you have to do? So there's some people having to kind of really face the fact that this is their reality. So for everybody, it affects you in many different ways. It's such an amazing conversation. And we definitely have to have you back on the show in the next season to continue the conversation and talk more sort of about the king and the queen and how we can really step into our power and take everything to the next level. But I love that the non-judgment. I think that is such a super, super awesome reminder. So if anyone's got any questions, put them in the chat. I can see someone's written being overgiving. They recognize that one with their lack of boundaries. And thank you, Andy, for putting all of the 4 archetypes into the chat for us there. Super helpful. Tracey, where do you hang out mostly on social media? Where is the best place for these guys to find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, I would just say LinkedIn. Please connect with me and follow me and just send me a quick DM. Let me know that you saw this. And it would just be lovely to meet you. And if you heard anything that sparked your interest or you want to know, I've got tons of resources. I'll pop them your way, but LinkedIn's perfect.
Amazing. And then after this, Tracey's going to put a few sort of links into the chat for you as well. So thank you so much for your time today. It has been really awesome to have this conversation about archetypes in connection to time management and how we can become more productive once we know the stories that we are running. So thanks for your time coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Until next time, guys, which will be tomorrow at 2:30 when we've got panel 4 of 5 panels to sort of end out the show. We will see you then. Stay safe, stay well, and don't forget to keep washing your hands.